Hi, welcome to Thanks Academy. It's a podcast you probably chose to listen to that's about all the best picture winners for the last 90 years, which I'm going to watch in random order because I haven't seen most of them, and I'm going to watch them with a random friend. Today's random friend is Ky Krebs. Hi, Ky.
Hello.
And today's random movie was supposed to be Gandhi, but we chickened out. And that's because it's 3 hours long and about a culture we probably shouldn't be talking on a podcast about.
Yeah.
In complete ignorance, anyway.
I hadn't even really thought about that since, I was just thinking in terms of, the scope of, we're going to sit down and watch a movie. And then you said that, and I was like, oh, the fact that I didn't think about that when you told me the name of the movie probably means you making this decision is the right choice.
I didn't either, but the only thing I know about Gandhi is that Gandhi's played by a British white guy, and I really wanted to make fun of that, but I also didn't 100% know if he was a British white guy. And I started to realize how much I didn't know, and that's part of what I think the charm of this podcast is, to be honest, that I am intentionally not learning anything about any of these movies, nor do I care to afterwards. However, I thought that particular movie I'm going to put on the shelf and think about how I'm going to deal with it. So what we did is we shaved 40 minutes off of our watch time.
Yeah.
Moved 3 years into the future and found another 1980s colonization drama comedy.
Drama comedy romance?
Biopic. We're not sure what it is. Called Out of Africa.
Whenever I Googled the name because I wanted to know who was in it. Didn't read anything about it. And I think it said drama romance.
Drama romance.
Yeah. So okay. I think there are a lot of themes.
So this is a romantic drama, which is like a romantic comedy with no gay people in it.
Yeah, and that's how you know that they're really going to tackle the subject of white colonization thoughtfully.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And probably heterosexuality very thoughtfully, too. Well, we do know who's in it because this is a famous movie-ish.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to see some Meryl.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she won Best Actress for this. She seems to win it for everything, so probably if it got Best Picture.
I feel like you can just assume.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. She's Oscar-worthy no matter what. And then Robert Redford, who I thought was dead by now. But I guess it's 1985, so is he still alive?
I know him by name alone.
Okay.
I don't watch many movies. So I know names of people, but I often cannot associate them with a face. Also, Robert Redford sounds like the kind of guy that would call me a faggot.
Oh, I don't think so.
Not knowing anything about him as a person, but if you were just oh, this is my friend Robert Redford, I'd be like, is this wall behind me going to be lockers soon? I don't know. It would make me nervous, I think.
Okay. Well, here's everything I know about Robert Redford, just so that we get it on the table. Since you know nothing, I'll throw everything I know.
I probably should have dropped the F word within the first 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah, content warning. Whatever. Okay. So we're going to have Robert Redford on, and here's everything I know about him. He started Sundance. He was handsome, and people thought that for a long time.
Uh-huh. That one I've heard.
He may or may not be alive. I think he's alive. I don't know. He has blue eyes. I get him and Paul Newman confused, but Robert Redford did not make a salad dressing. He made a movie festival. He was in Sneakers. That's probably the role I know him the best for.
This is a...
Sneakers?
What a list of facts about someone.
Uh-huh.
If you were just summing them up, it's
and
sneakers, blue eyes, everyone thought he was handsome, may or may not be dead.
And either him or Paul Newman, or maybe both of them, is in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I think they might both be in that one, and that is why I get them confused. But that's not an Oscar winner, so that'll never come up in this podcast. Okay, now you feel caught up?
I feel dizzy, and if those are the only facts that I'm going to know about him going in, I feel like I'm going to be biased against whatever he's doing for some reason, and I can't pinpoint why.
Huh.
But I know that he's my nemesis.
Hopefully we're supposed to hate them. So far, every movie I've watched in this podcast I've hated. So,
really?
Yeah, not a great track record. So it's fully
I love
endorsed.
hating things.
Yeah, we're going to do that. Probably. Unless it's really good. It might blow us away. Maybe we'll be crying at the end of this. You never know.
It's a romantic drama comedy about Africa.
I don't think it's a comedy. I don't think anything funny is going to happen. And if it does, it'll probably be offensive.
Yeah, I'm not holding out hope for a movie about white people in Africa made in the mid-'80s.
What was it about the end of the Cold War that the only movies we made were either about us being awesome or British colonies. Like, we just made a lot of movies about the former British colonies. I don't know what part of Africa they're in. So maybe it's a former Italian colony or a former Dutch colony, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
truth,
white people colonies.
In truth, I guess we were fighting our own war at home,
I
right?
guess so. I think we were just colony jealous. We were like, damn, we really gave up after the Philippines, didn't we?
Colony envy.
Yeah. Man, we could have done so much better than just Hawaii. Aw,
man, if we would have been colonizing, we would have colonized so much stuff.
Oh, man.
We just have so many places.
All we got was pineapples and lava. That was dumb. All right, so Out of Africa is, we don't know what it's about, but here it comes. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we should say about it. I thought for the longest time...
rated R.
Is it?
I think so.
I don't think we're going to see Meryl Streep's boobs in this, though.
Frankly, that's fine.
Maybe it's hyper violent. Maybe Schwarzenegger's in this.
Well, that would definitely spice it up, I guess. But again, I feel like that would just add an extra layer of like problematic to it.
Yeah. For the longest time, I think I thought this was a sequel to Romancing the Stone. I think there was a sequel, or is Romancing the Stone the sequel?
I have no idea.
You don't know. You're so young. Okay, I remember 80s movies very well. I've seen
probably like 200 movies in my entire life. I watched the shit out of TV series, but I watched so few movies.
You are perfect for this podcast. I'm so glad you're on, because if this is a podcast where people enjoy listening to people who know nothing about movies talk about them for some reason.
Yeah, if it weren't for the fact that there are all those reaction gifs of her, like if you just eliminated reaction gifs of Meryl Streep and someone was like Meryl Streep, I'd be like, is that the one with the dingo? I don't.
Oh no, that's Australia. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe the dingo's in this movie.
Cameo by the dingo, and that's why it's hyper violent, because this actually really dives into the baby part.
Oh, gross. Okay, well, let's see if this baby can get out of Africa. Here we go. God, I hope they play Toto's Africa. I hope that this is what it's from, this movie.
It's just on a loop in the background for all 2 hours, 41 minutes, and 32 seconds.
Oh, they're doing a Titanic. She's fucking old. No. No, bitch.
No, bitch.
It is not. That's the dumbest wedding dress I've ever seen.
Oh yes, I want my wedding to be Navy officer chic.
Oh my god, I'm using that.
I'd curtsy, but I'm drunk.
Hello, Baroness. I'd curtsied, but I'm drunk.
I thought about this the other day because they just zoomed in on those cow hoofs. Have you ever tried to picture animals that have hooves with toes and vice versa?
Oh, gross. Oh, yeah.
Right? It's real fucked up. Call me by your name and I'll call you by mine. What?
Alright, so they're together now. Cool.
Oh good. More montages of them driving across a fucking field!
I need to know how to think about this.
He came back to fuck both of you. Thank God.
She never returned to Africa. Oh good, a happy ending!
Something good happened.
Holy shit. It's only 3 minutes worth of credits. Wow, for 2.5 hours? Okay.
Fuck this movie. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is really, instead of this being like, thanks Academy, it's like, thanks Academy.
Well, that was the idea. I didn't think I was going to like most of these, but jeez, this movie was so bad. Here's what we have to do. We have to somehow give a recap of what happened. Nothing happened.
Nothing.
It was in Africa.
Meryl Streep went to Africa. She married some guy for his money.
No, he married her for her money.
Even clarifying that doesn't make a difference.
So here's what happens at the beginning. she gets like turned down by his brother because she wanted to marry him, and he was like, "No, I don't want to spend more than 3 days in a row with you."
A common theme.
A common theme in this movie. So then she goes to the brother and is like, "Hey, I've got some money. Will you take me with you to Africa?" And he's like, "Sure." And she marries him for the sake of doing that. And then he's like, "I can't stand to be with you for more than 3 days. I'm going to go off and fight a war."
Yep.
And then she meets Robert Redford, and the rest of the movie is him not being able to stand being around her more than 3 days in a row, and he breaks up with her.
And then she has her own version of the Chicago fire where she burns down her coffee roasting plant and then is a pitiful mess and is begging to some white guy who's also in khaki like everyone else.
Everybody's in khaki.
And then because he sees it and feels bad for her, he's like, I'll fly you to where you're going. But then he remembers how awful spending time with her is and crashes his own plane and kills himself in order to not have to follow up on that Uber ride that he agreed to.
Yeah, they don't explicitly say he killed himself, but that's definitely strongly implied by the way he couldn't get away from her fast enough. I guess you're supposed to think that this is the story of a woman making it on her own in Africa, but she doesn't make it. And her biggest problem is that she's on her own, and she never solves that because she's so obnoxious. She's not even obnoxious. She's just boring. She's really boring.
But like throughout everything, despite the fact that her entire amount of time that she spends there is inconsequential and meaningless, she's speaking in these weird eat, pray, love metaphors where she's just like, I saw a seagull fly through the sky. And I thought to myself, what a day. And then like an orchestra would pick up behind that and be like, wasn't that profound? And everyone would be like, it didn't even make sense.
No.
It was barely a sentence.
She was like, would that seagull have existed without me? Yes, it would
yeah,
happily.
100% would have.
Absolutely. Oh.
Will the village children make a game that includes my name? I watched you for 2 hours and 42 minutes and I still don't know your name.
Everything about this movie is just white people claiming things that don't belong to them and then being butthurt when it doesn't work out.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, whenever she's going back to the country that she came from, her houseboy,
who she bullied into getting medical help,
yeah. He packs up a bag and he's like, okay, where are we going? And she's like, oh no, you can't come back to my country. That's ours.
Yeah. You wouldn't be welcome there. Well, shit. I mean, even if it's true. Okay, so supposedly this takes place around World War I, kind of during and throughout World War I. So it's historically accurately awful to the natives who live in Kenya and the animals. The animals are slaughtered. Robert Redford, when she meets him, who's like the most reasonable and like progressive person in the movie, because he happens to think that the people who lived in Kenya before the white people got there can have their own thoughts and feelings.
And yeah, you're like, okay, good in that regard, but whenever he's introduced, he's literally carrying 2 giant-ass elephant tusks on his back.
He made his whole entire living being an elephant poacher.
Yeah. He was deeply in the throes of the ivory trade, but
yes.
He's like, listen, I am so likable. My eyes are so blue. Doesn't that mean anything?
Right. That gives me dominion over all the creatures of the earth. And then when the ivory trade gets cut off halfway through the movie, then he decides to start a safari company to help other rich assholes go into the savannah and kill other creatures, 3-4 at a time.
The way that one of his transactions was described was he said he wants 3 of everything. And it's like, what?
Which, bitch, that's 50% more than Noah's Ark got. Like, don't be so greedy.
3 of everything. 3! Money is no object.
Yeah.
This land is your land. This land is my land. No, really, it's my land. You have to leave now.
What is it? Like, the most empowering thing that Meryl Streep pulls off is whipping a lion. And then she shot another lion. So hurting and killing lions was kind of her biggest mark that she left on Africa.
Yeah.
So good for you.
And then at the end, she's being all pensive and thoughtful, like, I need to write my stories.
Ugh.
And it's like,
no, you don't.
It's like, why? Just because you had an altercation with a lion that, like, just wanted to eat your already slain cow?
Ugh.
And so you dive into a real prickly bush and you come out real scraped up from your prickly bush?
Oh, and don't forget one time when she shot the lion and turned on Robert Redford, she bit her lip so hard it bled. And
that's right.
That got him going. He liked that.
Yeah, he was like, "Are you okay?"
He was really into that.
"Are you okay? You bit your lip so hard."
So in addition to hating this movie, let's go ahead and dive into the most juvenile and most fun part we had with it, which is that at one point her original husband, who she didn't love, but she was making a go of it, he goes off to fight in the war. Somehow England and Germany are fighting each other over Kenya and Tanzania, I guess, or something like that. Her husband goes off and leaves her, and she gets super lonely, so she decides to drag out all of her livestock and all of her household servants and risk all of their lives to walk down to the front of this war and just tell her husband that she misses him. And along the way, a cow gets killed and people get hurt, and when she finally gets to the camp, she just says, "I miss you," and he's like, "I don't care." And then they have sex, and she gets super syphilis.
Super syphilis. Keep in mind, this was all like, she has a shitty conversation with him where she goes, "Oh, when are you coming home?" in that weird accent that we're supposed to believe is Denmarkian.
I guess it's Dutch in that it's hard to listen to.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to English, so that seems like an accurate Dutch.
And then whenever she goes back, this doctor is literally just pouring a glass of whiskey, and he goes, "Yeah, you got syphilis." And that's how she learns, and then
she's like, "My husband doesn't have it," and he's like, "Yeah, he probably has it a little bit, but you got lots."
Yeah, he says, "But you're very ill." Yeah, so he's just like, "Listen, you've got a lot of syphilis, like a lot of it." So then she has to, and this is right after she planted her crop of coffee at her plantation, and then she finds out it's going to take 4 years to grow, and she's like, "Oh shit, 4 years? That's a long time." But then luckily she gets syphilis, so she just goes back to Denmark to get treated for syphilis for 3 years. Then whenever she comes back, the coffee is thriving, and she's like, "This is pretty tight. Set it and forget it."
Yeah, she goes to Denmark to get pumped full of arsenic and comes back. So this is a recurring theme. So she almost dies when a lion eats her, but it doesn't. She almost dies when a lion attacks her, but it doesn't. She almost dies when another lion attacks her, but it doesn't. She almost dies from syphilis, but she doesn't. I mean, there's like time after time something almost happens to her, but it just doesn't. And then we're supposed to feel like, wow, what an adventurous life of almost having things happen to you.
Yeah, like we're just supposed to be sitting there being like, God does work in mysterious ways. Like...
The only real thing that happens to her is that at the end when her coffee plantation burns down, and it wasn't doing that great anyway. So, I mean, who cares?
And that's followed by a subpar rummage sale.
Oh my god, the worst garage sale ever. Like, nobody wanted her crap. Yeah, she brought all this crap down from Denmark, and then she had to sell it all in order to get her free plane ride to Mombasa.
Yeah, and everyone was looking at it, and they were like, "This is crap.
Yeah.
And we don't want it." And so then she just...
abandons it probably in the savannah. Like, she just litters. I would believe that. She just left it all there.
Well, yeah. They were smoking cigarettes throughout the entire movie. I never saw a fucking ashtray in the whole thing.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why your coffee plantation burned down.
Yeah, right? She's just like, "Oh, I don't know what happened. I was just smoking a cigarette back there. Next thing you know, I got spooked."
I think we saw 18 picnics. I stopped counting, but it was like half of this movie is just sweeping montages of picnics.
It's very formulaic the way that she is courted by Robert Redford, if you can even call it that, because it was very formulaic in the sense that it was a montage of them crossing a wide plain, panning out with orchestra music over it. Scene of them glamping, eating a nice dinner by a fire with a tablecloth and fine china in the plains, and then a weird, almost flirtatious pass until eventually they get onto it, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, and their relationship, it barely hits the "I'm going to keep a toothbrush at your house" stage before it stalls out, because Robert Redford's whole thing is like, nothing matters, carpe diem, why you want to like put ties on anything. And she's like, "No, I have to be married to somebody or I'll be sad." And he's like, "Well, sounds like that's your problem." And that's exactly where it ended. That was basically, that was exactly her problem.
But he's like kind of astonished that she like wants more from him, because like he's kind of like, "Oh, you know, like I'm sort of like surfer dude lifestyle," and he's just like, he's acting like, "Yeah, no, all I did was take her on a month-long safari across Kenya, and now she thinks it's serious. I don't know."
They're both assholes. Like, it's basically like a hardcore libertarian got together with a prissy evangelical wasp. Like, that's like the two most obnoxious people you can imagine getting together.
And I'm not even sure which of those descriptions Karina just gave apply to which of them.
Oh, no. Robert Redford's totally like, he's basically like libertarian to the hilt. Like, everybody do what you want all the time. Do whatever you want. I'm not going to examine or think about the fact that I kill animals for a living. And then she's like, oh, I just want to like educate these children and take over this native's lands and run it because I'm an imperialist asshole, but I'm going to think I'm good because I gave him a free school and I gave that one kid a Band-Aid and a job one time.
Yeah, the only time that he's truly introspective about the goings-on in Kenya is whenever he's capable of using it to play holier than thou in a conversation with another human being.
Yeah, at one point he had a companion, like a native companion from some tribe. He didn't even say which one it was.
Never had a line.
He probably didn't know.
Never had a line in the movie.
Well, and then she said what happened to him, and then he was like, he died. And she's like, what did you guys used to talk about? And he said, we didn't. And I was like,
nothing.
You're the worst friend ever.
Yeah, it's like, like you're sitting there with somebody and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Did I forget to tell you?
Yeah.
My buddy died, like, a long time ago.
I'm honestly surprised he knew his name. Oh, yeah, that guy used to follow me around and help me with all my stuff. Yeah, he's dead.
He could have just been calling him a name, too, though.
That's true. Oh, my God.
That would be very on brand for how awful those people were. It's just, like, the whole entire movie is just what, like, a white colonizer would think that trials and tribulations are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so first world problems. In the third world.
That's the thing, is that, like, I feel like it's even higher scale than first world problems. Like,
yeah,
there's some echelon that's above first world problems where it's like 1% problems almost, and they're just like, ooh, I saw a lion once, and now I'm spooked.
There's one point where she's starting her plantation. She's like, yeah, we got to build a retention pond here, and they're like, that water goes to villages, and people need to drink it. And she's like, we're still going to do it. And they did.
Yeah, she's like, well, we'll build the pond, and then once the pond is full, it'll keep going to villages.
This is the hero of our movie. This is the person we're rooting for because she's the nice... Well, she's not nice. She just... In the last third of the movie, I guess she sort of wears a dashiki. So she's, woke. And she begs for the native tribe that lived on her private land out of the goodness of her heart. When the bank's going to take over her land, she begs for them to get another piece of land, and that's like her supreme act of wokeness.
Yeah, and then, like, despite all of the things she does, like, in that meeting, she has the audacity for, like, he says, oh, that piece of land is outside of the plantation. We can't let them have that. And then she goes, why? Because it's theirs? And I was like, in what world do you get to pretend like you have done anything of value or civility to these human beings?
Exactly. She's like, oh, yeah, why don't they have their own land? Well, you owned their land to begin with.
You were barely shy of, like, ringing a bell at them.
They are only in this predicament because you are owning their land. You could have abnegated that land claim, and then they wouldn't be caught up in your little mortgage scheme, you idiot.
Yeah, I do like to think of her entire operation as a weird Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. Now, look, we shouldn't be judging historical figures based on the, ethics of today or anything. And I empathize with the fact that, if we grade her on a curve, she was the least cruel, animal butchering, imperialist colonizer scum of the lot in Kenya at the time.
What a superlative.
Thank you. And I'm not saying this about, like, fictional characters. Like, this apparently was based on 3 or 4 diaries this lady wrote. So this is, like, based on a true story-ish. Or at least based on stories she made up. It was unclear.
Maybe inspired by might be the better...
What was real, what wasn't. It didn't, yeah.
It's just, like, if this is what... we did that a lot, where we started to say a sentence, and then just because it's so confusing and stupid, like, we just were like... And then, like, when you just sigh that thought away because your brain can't finish it.
What's her name? Baroness something. Ugh. Imagine if...
Baroness von Beltrix or something.
Imagine if 100 years from now, you were going to sit down and watch a movie about the time Ivanka Trump went to Jerusalem.
Oh my god.
That's essentially what this movie was.
This is just World War II Ivanka Trump in Jerusalem.
Yep. It's essentially... what it was. She's walking around waving her perfume in men's faces at the beginning. And Okay.
Zachariah now at altar.
I'm trying to do this when I really dislike a movie. Okay, were there any bright spots for you, Kai?
I
am not.
It sounds like I'm being sarcastic. I'm really digging here. Like, I'm really trying to find one.
I'm not editing that silence out.
That's totally fine. I feel like it should be clear how long this is taking me to find it. I maybe the part where she got scared in her tent because she heard a noise and then she went to go sleep around the fire with everybody else.
Oh, that was cute. There was a line we liked. Some random character who we didn't see again in her wedding got super drunk. What did she say?
Oh, she said, I would curtsy, but I'm drunk.
That's right. Oh, I'm sorry,
Good evening, Baroness. I'm sorry, I would curtsy, but I'm drunk.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm going to use that. You know, my favorite was there was a character in there who looked and dressed and acted like a lesbian, and she kept confiding in the Baroness that she was having a real hard time figuring out how to land a man. And I was just like, girl, yeah. And that's how, but we never get to close her story arc.
She literally says at one point, like, I know I'm supposed to be wanted by them. Like,
but for some reason...
Literally, she's around, she confides all of this in her, then she sees her, like, 3 years later at a New Year's party, and then once again at Robert Redford's funeral, and that's it.
No, she was at the horse competition, riding the horses.
Oh, that's right. She was at
Which
the
is, of course...
She was at the country club equestrian meet.
Yeah, right. Which is, I think the dykiest thing you could do in 1920 Kenya. Be the equestrian champion of Nairobi or whatever they were doing.
Oh, it was called the I think it was called the Something Kenya Social Club. It literally was a country club in Kenya.
At the beginning of the movie, when Baroness what's her face, we don't really know her name.
Von Beatrix,
whatever.
Crumpet.
Meryl Streep. When she first gets to Africa, she tries to go into the little men's room at the social club, and they kick her out because she might see them sitting around drinking. Right. Ooh, sexism. And then at the end, after all of her non-trials and non-tribulations, they invite her in for a whiskey, and she has exactly, a 2-minute whiskey with one person and then leaves?
Not even.
And now the world is equal for men and women.
She walks in, they go to the bar, and he says, 1 whiskey? And he goes, 2. And everyone gasps a little bit. Tiny, quiet little, those old man ruffled mustache gasps. They both do a shot of whiskey. She says thank you, and then she walks out immediately. So it's like a grand total of maybe 45 seconds.
And the whole world changed from there. It was like, and then Rosie the Riveter, and we're fine now. Like, that. What was the point of any of this?
I don't know.
This is like... It started with Meryl Streep in old woman makeup, writing this from Denmark or somewhere snowy. And it gave me Titanic flashbacks, because the whole movie is literally a Titanic flashback, right? And
why did they show us her in that house?
I don't know. Imagine, and it was green screen too, which was hilarious.
I know.
They never got to leave Africa. Oh my God, when she had syphilis and she went back to Denmark, did they go to Denmark? No. They just kept showing scenes of Africa while she narrates what's happening to her in Denmark. It's the weirdest thing. It's like they didn't have the budget to film anywhere except for this one ranch that's probably in Kansas.
Yeah, she's like, the doctors are pumping me full of arsenic, like when Hydra tries to make a bad superhero, and also, okay, now I'm back.
Yeah.
And
she came back not crazy and with a nose. That was disappointing.
Yeah, her biggest thing is she's like, oh, now I can't have children, and I wanted children so bad. Well, good, you'd be a bad mom.
Ugh. But anyway, so like this whole thing is told in like flashback. I owned a farm in Africa. And it was essentially, just think about Titanic. If the old lady who started narrating the Titanic story rambled and had nothing of consequence to relate, but it took the same amount of time. Imagine that. That's exactly what Out of Africa was. It's Titanic without the boat sinking.
Yeah.
The boat got to port. She had a nice little affair with Jack. Jack said no thanks when they got to the end of the line, and then she went home.
And the worst thing that happened was that at one point the cruise ran out of vodka.
This movie was so boring that I now think Titanic is one of the better Best Picture winners of all time. Because at least it's a version of this movie where some shit happens.
Yeah, like there is no moral to any of this. I don't know. Maybe there's something in there. I want to try to give it credit. Because it's like, Karina, we're not dumb people. Like,
no, we could analyze this literarily, but we just sat through it and it was painful. We were checking the time. We almost fast forwarded.
Just to end the movie with a whole bunch of speculation about how people in Africa are going to talk about you when you're gone, when you literally did fuck all your entire time in the country aside from like a couple years of harvesting coffee beans.
Oh yeah, thanks for coming and exploiting our labor. We're gonna sing songs about you long after you're dead. Fuck off. What was the thing too at the end where she was like, oh, I got reports from Maasai warriors, so I guess got on the internet and emailed or something, that lions were going and sitting around and visiting Robert Redford's grave?
Yeah.
Like he was a friend to all animals? The dude was a fucking
He
poacher.
was a poacher! He was... Look at that big old arc of blue from me scream. Oh, God.
Kai's watching himself peg the microphone in frustration.
Literally what he was doing. Like, they never showed him killing animals, but that's literally what he did as a career in Kenya the entire span of the movie. That's what he did the whole time, and then they're just like, the animals will remember his spirit. No, they won't!
Well, not well. They might remember it, but they're not going to like
lion's
it.
taking a smelly meat shit on his grave because he's pissed off that he killed Mufasa.
This movie should be called Thank God You Are Out of Africa. Oh my God.
At the end it does like one of those like end credit rolls where it's like giving you the text of like what happened after the movie, because for whatever reason it thinks you still need more information because they think that you give a shit.
Yeah, after 2 hours and 40 minutes.
And it's just like, she never returned. I don't remember her name, but it had her name, and it's like blah blah blah, Kate whatever never returned to Africa, and we both went good. Like, to the screen that was not talking to us, that is not a sentient person, we both yelled good, and that was...
That's the least anybody did in this movie for Africa.
The least.
Was bug out and not come back. Oh, we got real Wakanda forever on this. Like, there was no... We were not rooting for anybody. I wasn't even really rooting for, like, her natives, because...
Well, because there wasn't anything to them. They didn't give them any lines or characterization or anything.
Not really, except for the chief, and his whole thing was that he was stubborn about not letting some stupid Christian missionary teach his, children from his tribe, and you know what? He's probably right.
Yeah, because he
probably got a good
he was
point.
Like, oh, that's great that they can read. What good is it doing them? They were like, we don't have books.
And she's like, oh, reading is a very important skill. They'll be thankful. And he's like, I live in an oral tradition culture. Leave me alone and let us keep our land. And then she couldn't even pull that off. They have to move. They Trail of Tears, the tribe. They don't really Trail of Tears them. I guess there's a semi-happy ending where they just had to move down the block to a different reservation.
Like, the closest thing to a happy ending was one of her servants who, despite the fact that she wanted him to serve her all of those bottles of wine that she drank throughout the movie, probably within like the multiple thousands because she was a lush, she made him wear silk gloves that made the bottle really slippery, so like every time he was holding it, because the gloves weren't the right size either, so every time he leaned over the table or something, the bottle would slip a little bit, and then she would give him this real pissed off side eye, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then on the last day while she's having her shitty rummage sale, he does the same thing and he can finally hold the bottle with the gloves, and then she goes, oh, this was a terrible idea, and takes the gloves off of his hands as if she's done him some sort of kindness, and then keeps the gloves!
She doesn't even let him sell the calfskin for food. God damn it.
Oh, thanks for letting me take off these shitty gloves on my last day of employment.
There's no redeeming quality to
nothing.
Anybody who you were supposed to be following in this movie, except for Robert Redford's friend, who I will give credit for. He was nice the whole movie.
Which one?
I remember he grew a mustache later, but he was like the buddy who introduced her to Robert Redford, like they were buds. And then at the end,
the one who was sleeping with the beautiful Somalian woman?
Yeah, exactly. At the end, he's dying of sweats, and then he and then he married a beautiful Somali woman she was rad too. She was another shining light for me because not only was she gorgeous and tall, but like she went to this dude's funeral and the white people wouldn't let her stand inside the fence because that's how white people are. They build a fence on your land and then don't let you come into it.
Yep. And
Meryl Streep tries to give her a nod like, yeah, we're women in this together, and she looked at that white woman like, nah.
Just this
unfaltering,
cold slightly winced eye
Right.
piercing into your bullshit stare.
Exactly. Like, I am not going to acknowledge you, Becky.
She never had a single line in the whole movie either, and she was one of my favorite characters.
She was the best character in the movie because she didn't have to talk to see through everybody's bullshit. Especially Becky's.
Whatever the opposite of smizing is, smiling
Yeah.
with your eyes, this was like fuck you with your eyes. It was fuckizing.
You know, we couldn't figure out if the main character's name was Karen or Kaylee or Kaylee
Carla?
or it's that Dutch accent. So I think her name is Becky. I'm just gonna call her Baroness Becky. I think that's what we're going with.
Becky with the ratty hair.
She had really ratty hair.
It was like one day away from being an accidental dreadlock.
She would have had dreadlocks. She is the worst. She's like a burner who shows up at Burning Man with no art. Just for the experience. And then goes home and writes a diary about it like she really experienced something, even though she contributed nothing. Except she got sand in her cooch. Good for you.
I remember buying a plane ticket to Africa. And then I remember something coming up, so I canceled the trip. But it still meant something to me. Like, she still went, but it was just like, that was like basically like the amount of interesting her story was.
Yeah, exactly.
God. There
This
was
is World War One. Eat, pray, love, because that's all she did was eat and love. She didn't even pray. She just ate and loved, and she didn't love that well either.
No, she didn't even really love. She just
men couldn't wait to get away from her.
She just kind of like frisked a little bit. I don't know.
She must have been a terrible way.
Every single kiss scene too was extremely awkward and uncomfortable.
She was really bad at
Speaking of
kissing.
love.
Oh, that's right. She moved her neck like a giraffe, which was an interesting choice. I mean, I guess that's what makes Meryl Streep one of the greats, is that she figures out an awkward way for her stupid character to kiss. But you know why? That's probably how she got super syphilis, was from being such a bad lay that the syphilis was like, no, you're not going to pass me on. We better just take you down.
Like before that, it was just like regular, like
I want to be transmitted
bacteria.
syphilis.
No, it was just, I would just think it was regular bacteria, and it was just so uncomfortable with being in or around her in a sexual capacity that it was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to kill you.
Exactly. It was just a probiotic.
And thus syphilis was born.
It was probably just a yeast infection, and they were like, girl, it's super syphilis, never fuck again.
Or it's just like it was a yeast infection, but your body is literally so toxic that it gained sentience and came up with a plan, and now it's coming after the rest of you.
Guys, we didn't like this movie. We really didn't like this movie.
No, you know what? We're
angry.
going for 2 hours and 40 minutes.
No, I think...
No, it's too
All right,
late.
there's two things we have to do before we can wrap up. One of them is that this is actually a sneaky surprise crime podcast, because those are the ones that get, all of the attention and listenership, right? So the unsolved mystery, the unsolved crime that you, the listener, can help me solve, that we are slowly dissecting clue by clue, is how Crash won the Best Picture. And every Best Picture leading up to Crash gives us another clue as to how the Academy would arrive at that decision. Kai, have you seen Crash?
Yes.
Okay. What do we think this movie gave the Academy?
This one gave them a baseline for what bad is. So they were like, we know that once they got to the year that Crash, well, what year did Crash win?
I don't know. 2000 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. It sounds like you're really prepared to dive into this mystery.
I haven't got there yet.
So I think they were able to take a look at this and be like, okay, we have a baseline for what is just starkly, deeply uninteresting.
Yep.
But because it was 2 hours, that means that there's probably some hidden message that nobody ever got and nobody ever will get, and it will be lost to the annals of time.
Ugh.
But they were like, I feel like this is also what introduced them to the idea that racism is bad, maybe.
But that's not the point of the movie. Like, the racism is mostly allowed to skittle right along.
I know. And they were just like, okay, well, maybe...
Oh, you think the Academy hated that part of this movie?
I think the Academy was just like, they gotta say something, right? And, like, they just kept on waiting for, like, the moment, and then they were just like... They were literally, like, doing that shit that we were doing at the beginning of the movie, where they were tapping each other on the shoulder, and they were going, did you see how she has the fucking dog in the cart with the roof on it, and she's making the black guy ride on top of that pallet of lumber?
That's right. She has a
and
whole...
they were like, they're going to talk about that, right? And then they don't. And they were like, well, that's probably not good. And then Crash was all about racism mostly, right? That's the word.
So I think you're right. I think Crash is a make good for giving, as recently as 1985, a very white movie about Africa the Best Picture, despite the movie never once addressing racism beyond hey, maybe we should... It's not even let's not kick the natives off their land. It's let's kick them to some land so that they have some. That was the stance of this movie.
That was take number one. My second guess would be that they saw absolutely no problem with any of this whatsoever, and they've just been powering through all these years. And then somebody was like, hey, all of these movies that you're putting out are like weirdly problematic in a very racially motivated way. And then they said, oh shit, we gotta course correct, and then they overcorrected with Crash.
I like that. It's like a steer into the skid thing. Yeah.
It's like how sometimes whenever you're like fishtailing, you have to accelerate before you can brake, you know?
Right, they were trying to Tokyo drift their racism. I like it. Yeah, okay.
That would be my theory.
All right, that's a good theory. Ky Krebs, I enjoyed having you on. You have your own podcast. Would you like to plug it or anything else that you do? You do a lot.
Sure, yeah. I do a bunch of stuff. I also have a podcast that if people are interested in hearing more of this bitchy attitude that I have towards basically everything, it's called Extra Salty. I host that with Jasmine Ellis, and you've actually been on an episode of it before in the past.
That's true. Yeah, we all just kind of slut around on each other's podcasts. It's great. Yeah.
It's a podcast about resentment, why we hold on to it, how we let it go. I also have an album out.
Yeah.
It is self-titled.
Brand new.
Yeah, brand new.
Just came out recently.
May 25th.
And if you're ever in Austin, Texas, come check him out. He's very funny. What's your Twitter handle?
Oh, everything is Ky Krebs. K-Y-K-R-E-B-S. All over the place.
God, you're so lucky. My name is weirdly common in Sweden.
Really?
So, yeah, I don't know why. A lot of Hungarians move there and whatever. It's a long story and who cares?
They said Scandinavian, more like Scandinavian. We taken it. That's dumb. I know. I'm sorry.
It's you know what, forgiven because you watched Out of Africa with me.
I don't have to apologize for that. I had to watch Out of Africa.
Not only that, but you were willing to watch Gandhi with me, which I think is even like 10 times more points. Because for all we know, that was a better movie.
Yeah. That one was 3 hours 20, so like we would literally just be finishing the movie right now.
Yeah, but it might have been a brisk 3 hours 20.
Maybe.
I'm really looking forward to, only one Lord of the Rings one. It was the last one. I'm really looking forward to watching that.
With somebody who hasn't seen the first
any of
two.
them.
Just like completely out of context.
It was so, what do you think? Was that a good movie?
So you haven't seen The Hobbit or the first two Lords
or haven't read any of the books. Like, here, let's just make you watch the third movie in the trilogy and say, was that a great picture?
How do you feel about the epic conclusion with no context leading up to it?
Oh my god, we're gonna have so much fun on this podcast. Hey, if you want to catch all of the fun of us hating every movie ever made, apparently, you just kind of subscribe to us on whatever you found us on. We're on Stitcher. Our Facebook page has to be Thanks Oscar because someone stole Thanks Academy from under me before I thought to register it. And you can also find it at karinamagyar.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being on, Ky.
Thanks, Academy.
And thank you, Academy.